Thank you. I'm clearly the odd one out here. I'm a professor of commercial law, and I'm also a wild water swimmer. So thank you. I've got your app. He's no longer here. And the what has contract commercial law to do with protecting rivers, protecting? So when I accepted to come here, I was trying to think, okay, so how can we do? Law clearly has an awful lot of work to play. We did talk this morning quite a lot about legislation and policy and all these things, regulation. But that's not the only law that is available. And in a way, policy and regulation is very much top-down, and it's very easy to say, oh, that's not my problems, that's the policy department, or that's regulation, so that has nothing to do with it. But I think, as we have heard quite a lot this morning, we're all concerned. This is not just the water company, this is not just the farmers, this is all of us. And commercial law, therefore, contract is what links all of us together. And contracts are everywhere, in everything that we do. And they are essential for the planning of our transactions. But in a way, they have become far too central, and we have become far too transactional. We don't think about the water that we just open a tap and it's there. We don't think of the water as essential, and yet, as we have heard this morning, water sustains us all. So when I was thinking of how I was going to link it all, effectively contracts links us all, and how can not just top-down regulation, not just bottom-up, because we have heard this morning the amazing work that is being done by people concerned about the state of our water because we can't swim in it. But then we need to link us all. How do we organize ourselves better? And contract law, commercial law, transaction need to change. And how can we effectively do business that benefit society, protect people? But by society, I also include nature, river, soil. Thank you very much. I will never look again at the soil in the same way. And therefore, because we are all of it together, we need top-down, bottom-up, but we also need to relate to each other. And I think that's what we saw this morning. We heard about values, and effectively, what is it that we need to do? How can contract law help? By putting values into the way we relate to each other. Stop being purely transactional driven. We've heard the profit driven. We've heard, yes, the farmers need to make a living, but these profit driven companies have been facilitated by the legal system, which helps these companies being purely profit-driven by not thinking about what is our relation to water, what is our relation to the soil, what is our relation to the ecosystem that we live in. We are purely transactional, we are not relational. And therefore, thinking about how do we change the system, so we need to change the system from the top down, from the bottom up, but from the middle as well. We all have a role to play. We are all, as it is absolutely clear, this morning we've heard water sustains us. Without water, we are nothing. The soil sustains us. So we are all interconnected, interrelated, interdependent, and yet our legal system is very linear, it's very transactional. And so that is also what needs to change, not just the policy, but by design we need to change the way we think. So this morning we talked about values. So how can we bring those values we bring those values into the contract that we enter with the water company. We enter into this contract with the people who are feeding us, and we are buying the things at the supermarket. So it's therefore a question of governance, but we need to change the way we relate to each other. So we need to go from a transactional to a relational. And there is a little tool in contract which is called relational contract theory. You probably haven't heard about it, but you may have heard of Mr. Bates and his fight with the post office. This came to ITV, but back in 2019, there was a case where the court said this is a relational contract, and therefore the post office clearly shouldn't have done what they said, what they did, and they should have been more relational towards Mr. Bates and all the other people. They should have been more cooperative. Rather than blaming them, they should have helped them. We talked about this morning cooperation, collaboration. We are all in this together. It's not about blaming. So therefore, with the power of all of us. And that is effectively the essence of relational contract theory. So how do we bring those values? We've all talked about these values. We've got the wonderful 2015 Act, which does tell us what it is that we need to imbue our contracts with. So borrowing from the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, collaboration, integration, involvement, long-term prevention. If we design our contract with the suppliers, with the supermarket, with the water company, that what is it that we need? We need to be sustainable, we need to have better relations, then the middle bit of the law, not the top down, not just the bottom up, but everything links together. So, but the final thing which I'd like to mention, so lots of, and this is something that I am quite passionate about, in order to relate better with each other and in order to integrate ourselves within the ecosystem, not the dominant species, in order to relate back with our water, not just because I can't swim in it and I need an app in order to tell me whether it's safe for me. But as we have heard this morning, the water sustains us. Therefore, we need to create a better circle, not a vicious circle, but a virtuous circle, because we'll get better the water, we'll get better the soil, will get better, and then we all win. So this relational also starts with remembering that we are part of the ecosystem, but we are an equal part. We are not the dominant that has the strongest impact. And therefore, what I haven't heard is how, so restoring rivers, but how do we give a voice to the river? Everything this morning has been driven by what is good for, or very human-centered, if I could say that. But what about the river themselves? What is good for them? What is good for the ecosystem, therefore, that we need to maintain in order for us to live? So that virtuous circle. So not only relational contract theory has a role to play, but in relation to that relational values, these societal values that we need to imbue into everything, how we relate to each other. Helen this morning, there are already some wonderful things which are being created. Helen mentioned, so is part of the, they have appointed a water guardian in the Ask Partnership. I am a member of Friends of the River Exe, and we have created a covenant which was designed following an assembly of beings, of river beings, where we had a conversation and asked the river beings, what is it that you need in order to flourish? But this is a question of governance, and we already have some governance tools that perhaps we simply need to re-emerge. I am working with Dr. Rueda, who is in the room, from Exeter, on adapting the notion of commoning to water. Water doesn't belong to any of us. It belongs to all of us, and therefore recognizing that value. So these are the values, but by designing better contract as well as better policy documents, then we can give the power to the people to really reconnect. Thank you very much.